Well, okay, good. I thank Jude and Li Ming, who has walked out of the room, for inviting us to come. So us means me and Lok Yu, because we are neighbors in NTU. So as you will probably realize later that our talks are all related together with Elsa's. Elsa is going to be a bit theoretical, and so therefore we will avoid giving very theoretical talks and touch on things that we actually do in practice. So one of the things that I have done, two of the things that I have done is on cultural heritage, and the other part is on gentrification, and of course these two are connected, and of course very relevant to the mission of URA. So let me get started by saying first, so this first part of the work is together with Professor Andrea Nanetti, who is a historian, but he's in the School of Art, Design and Media because he teaches art history there. And as a historian, he makes money outside of the university by giving professional advice to people who want to preserve cultural heritage. So that means, if you have a castle on your farmland, is it worth conserving? So should you actually spend money to spruce it up and allow tourists to come and step on the castle? Because maybe after 100 tourists, the castle will collapse. So this kind of stuff. As you can see from here, this is a relatively old slide. So we composed this set of slides when Singapore was still celebrating SG50, but of course now 8 years have passed. Okay, and at that point in time, we were wondering where Singapore might go. So I need to point backwards because the remote is there. So I think everyone agrees here, definitely here, and a lot of foreigners also agree that Singapore is an economic success story, especially when we were in the mood for SG50, and obviously we are looking forward to celebrating SG100, which will be 40 plus years from now. I think I won't be around, so maybe you can celebrate on my behalf. But of course, there is also this danger of going from hero to zero. Okay, so we want this path, but not this one here. There's a lot of things are not completely within our control. So how do we make sure that we go on this path and not this path? And it turns out that the old things are important. So old things like Singapore River. Well, I mean, you can't see this scene anymore because Lee Kuan Yew tow away all the bumboats. Okay, and this is Chinatown. I think it is Chinatown. Looking towards this building, I don't know whether it still exists. Does it? OCBC Center still exists. But I understand that commercial land is only leased for 25 years. So maybe soon it will be not here anymore. It's a landmark in those days. And of course, this doesn't exist anymore. This is, I think, I forgot the name for it, but National Theatre. I think my convocation from NUS was here. It's in Kallang, right, this thing? Fort Canning. Oh, this is Fort Canning. Okay, so I've mistaken some buildings already. And this one, I spent a lot of very happy days in. And of course, now it's a spanking new building, but doesn't quite have the same feel. Okay, and this is, I don't remember what this is. I think this is Lee Kuan Yew's house. Yeah. I mean, SG50, so must be. Because that was also the year he passed away. Okay, so I talk about our choices that we have to make from now on to make sure that we are on this ascending trajectory towards SG100 and not fall flat to SG0. But unfortunately, we're dealing with a complex system. I think the audience here must have heard complex systems so many times that you get tired of it. Maybe tired of people giving you slightly different explanations. So there's actually distinction between simple systems versus complex systems, and then somewhere in between there are complicated systems. So let me go through something that is really simple. So this is a toy called Newton's cradle. It's a simple system. The rules governing this particular system is very easy, but you have to learn some physics. Okay, the rules governing the car is the rules themselves are not that difficult because there are only 3 control apparatus inside the car, and that is the the accelerator, the gas pedal. No, the gas pedal is accelerator. The gas pedal, the brake, and the steering wheel. So 3 things only. But of course, a typical car has about 30,000 parts. So the interior of the car is relatively complicated, but the car behavior of the car itself is not so complicated because there are only 3 controlling devices, whereas a human crowd is a complex system. Okay? So one of the things that our previous president of NTU lamented is that he came to NTU wanting to do something with the university, but for professors are like cats. How many of you have experienced herding cats? No, right? So her sheep are very obedient. Dogs will probably follow you too. Cats go wherever they want. You can never hurt cats. Okay, so, and of course, a bunch of professors in university will also be a complex system. So human crowds each have their own goals. They go wherever they like. It is very difficult to hurt them. Even with, with modern ICT kind of technology, it's not known. We cannot be sure that we can actually steer the crowd in certain ways to make pedestrian traffic more efficient. Okay, so the typical definition of a complex system would be that it consists of many parts, usually very, very large number. And it has, between these parts, there are strong and non-linear interactions. So if it is just linear interactions, then the behavior is simple. So it has to be non-linear. And strong non-linear, some to computer scientists will be taken to mean conditional. That means it will do one thing if these conditions are satisfied and something else if other conditions prevail. And then there's also a hierarchy of emergent behaviors. And I'll talk about 1 or 2 of those emergent behaviors later in this talk. And it's typically acknowledged that the whole is sum of the parts. So this is something due to Aristotle. But a more recent person, Philip Anderson, who is a Nobel laureate in physics, said that for a complex system, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and more importantly, different from the sum of the parts. That means the whole itself. If you try to write down equations describing it, you cannot start from the equation describing the parts because those equations will have to be completely different. And then, of course, complex systems are capable of undergoing adaptation. And which is why there are so many complex behaviors that we see in complex systems. Some of these would be the ability to withstand changes in environmental conditions. So that ability we call robustness. But of course, if it fails to hold out against the environment, then the complex system can undergo regime shift. So if you have a complex system that is like this, then we can see, we understand now that such a system is relatively simple. So if I tune the environmental variables, then the response of this system would be more or less move along a straight line. So something that does this is a simple system. Whereas if the system is interconnected like this, okay, you can see that there are difference between strong interactions and weaker interactions. More importantly, there are loops. Near proximal ones like this, as well as the ones that are very far apart. These are feedback loops. They can be positive feedback or negative feedback, and they lead to behavior like this. And we can understand robustness to mean that its performance is roughly the same over a broad range of environmental variables or control parameter. And then after that, of course, if it cannot hold out anymore, it will just switch over to another regime. And this particular behavior down here is called a regime shift. So society is a complex system, and we see regime shifts in societies very frequently. Much more frequently than we hope we would see, but because they are difficult to manage, this kind of regime shifts. Okay? And because I was working together with Andrea, we also work on analyzing historical data. But one of the things that interests both of us is heritage. And because he has been giving so much professional advice on the management of cultural heritage, he wanted to set up a theory for heritage. because that none exists before we came up with something like this. And he recognized that the heritage, cultural heritage, basically culture, is a system that interacts both with the landscape and the agents that are doing something with both the landscape as well as the cultural system. And therefore, we start with a picture, simple picture like this. Let's imagine that this is Singapore in 1850. Okay, and these blue things are buildings, the green things are people, and the red lines are interactions between people. So these kind of interactions will form what is now called a social network. Of course, here we do not distinguish what kind of interaction is between these two. It may be that because they walk the same dog, one of them do it in the morning, the other one do it in the evening. It doesn't matter that this guy here is keep on buying chicken rice from the other person. It's not important at this point in the theory. And then if we then, so I said that, so the annotations are this. So the green things are at that time we call these actors. And then of course the blue things I've explained, they are buildings. And then what happened next? And then the links are interactions between the actors. This is 1850, so move forward 50 years, you realize that something has changed. So what has changed? Come on. Sorry. Okay, so, what has changed? You find some new actors. So if you have watched the animation and if you have progressed smoothly, you realize that these two actors are new. And you realize that these two interactions are new, so there are new actors here as well. More importantly, these interactions are now, I fill them in. So they're not just red with white color inside, now they are red with, filled with red. So these indicate stronger interactions instead of the weak interactions between everybody else. Okay, and then move forward another 50 years, things have changed. So first of all, you can have new buildings, so that's a sign of progress. For Singapore, because new buildings are popping up. And then, some things we can't really help it because old actors die, because humans cannot live forever. And then, of course, there are new actors. These are babies. They have really no connections with other people. And then what happens, of course, is that there was an old actor here who is key in 1900, because a lot of the interactions go through him or her. Here, because the old actor has died, so now there is a new key actor in the landscape. And then, but what happens, what other things that happen is that we see that some of the interactions that are strong over here, they start to get replicated over this part. Maybe this is like City Hall and this is Marine Parade. So, the strong interaction patterns are spreading out over space and of course over time. Let me see. And now it's year 2000. And what do I want to say? And of course, there are more new buildings. The old building has been demolished, maybe, unnecessarily. Maybe, it's a building of value, but I will get to the point of how we decide whether a building has value or not very soon. The old building has been demolished. Some of the strong interactions have disappeared. But there is an intense replication of strong interactions around the key actor. And what happens is that this intensification of social interactions, because they happen so frequently around this building, the building itself has now meaning of its own. So it's now no longer just a cinema or a fountain. Now it is significant. It's culturally significant to not just the participants in these interactions, but also for people far away, because later I explain why it becomes significant to others who don't actually participate in the interactions. So we then, based on this simple picture, we came up with a theory of processes. So there are three important processes that we identified that governs the cultural heritage. The first is replication. So if something is important, it will get replicated. That means, it may happen first in Tiong Bahru, but later on you find that it also happens in Queenstown, and later on you find that it happens in Toa Payoh, then Ang Mo Kio, and then Bedok, and starts spreading all over Singapore. So that's the first one. The next thing that is, the next process that is important is transmission. That means that, the old generation created these interactions, this kind of template of interactions. The new generation pick it up. So it has to be transmitted through from one generation to the next before we can even call this cultural heritage. And then finally, this is something that I think is the least well understood process governing cultural heritage. And that is the new generation doesn't want to use the social interactions in the same way that their fathers and mothers do. So if the cultural heritage is to remain strong, it has to transform along the way to suit every generation. That means that, I do things this way, my kids will do things in a similar but slightly different way, and their children will also do it in a much more different way. Okay? So these are human interactions that get replicated, transmitted, and transformed. Okay? And we can call these kind of things intangible cultural heritage. Of course, here we are not giving specific meaning to specific interaction patterns. That will be a whole big topic by itself. And then the enhancement. So what we understand from the simple picture that we've shown earlier is that this kind of human interaction patterns can be enhanced by landscape features. So the landscape feature can be buildings. And then that's how tangible architectural heritage can emerge. But these kind of landscape features can also be natural. That means can be a river, can be a hill, can be a park, can be just a forest, but they can become heritage of their own because they serve the purpose of enhancing the interaction patterns, and therefore there is this symbiotic relationship between intangible cultural heritage and the tangible ones. Okay? So I'll skip through this very quickly, and of course you understand that this is going to eventually become a tangible natural heritage, the birds, and this is going to become a tangible architectural heritage. This is a temple, and while people go to temple to worship, if they strike 4D, maybe there'll be more people going there. Okay, so you can see maybe this temple is famous for striking 4D. And after a while, people realize that, oh, so many people go to the temple, I can set up a business there. So maybe they sell fishball noodle right here, and then the family would sit down to have breakfast after going to the temple to do whatever they want to do, and then the little kid will wander off after fishball noodle to enjoy natural heritage. Okay, so this is how we imagine a specific example of intangible cultural heritage can give rise to tangible ones, tangible architectural heritage and tangible natural heritage. And so if I want now to collect data on cultural heritage, what do I look for? So I can look for traditional media. So for example, if a place is significant, we expect it to be mentioned by the newspaper many, many times. That means, this is some, Tim Hocking, there's an event. Next year, there will be the same event. Or maybe within the same year, there will be multiple events. So it will be mentioned in traditional media. It will be shown in paintings because people have emotional attachments to this kind of heritage. They like to paint them, or they like to take pictures, photographs. And then, sometimes after, maybe they met the person, a songwriter met the wife outside this temple, so write a love song, but mention the cultural heritage, and then what else? And then, of course, some most ambitious person can even write a theater or a dance, or create a dance based on this cultural heritage. And then, of course, in new media, then we now have blogs, tweets, and in Facebook. And also YouTube videos. Of course, YouTube video now getting very important. Or you can have Flickr and Instagram. I think nowadays maybe some of you don't recognize Flickr anymore, right? Died already maybe. It's for storing photos, for storing and sharing photos. But now there are so many other platforms that does that. So therefore, we can, based on this set of data that we realize that we can collect, we can start talking about the principle of qualitative assessment. So first of all, not all media types are equal. Some things like some media types like dances and drama, they take more time to create than paintings and songs. So if I want to weigh one cultural heritage along against another one. I have to give more weight to the one where there are dances and dramas instead of just having paintings and songs. Okay, paintings and songs, of course, they take more time to create than photographs, so we should give more weight to paintings and songs. And of course, not all media instances are equal. Even if we are talking about photographs, the painting by masters would carry more weight than painting by novices. And the photographs of famous photographers should carry more weight than each of us who is just taking out the iPhone to snap a picture. And of course, then, because of these way of quantitative assessment, we realize that not all heritage sites are equal. And of course, there are people who maybe object to this assessment, which is fine because we can each give different weights to the different media types. And more importantly, until we have a true principle of quantitative assessment, it is very difficult to put a number down. And of course, not all the artifacts in the heritage site, they are equal. We have also been talking about, me and Andrea, we've been discussing about whether there exist principles of quantitative assessment. We struggle to develop some principles, but we have at least one principle quantitative assessment. I don't have a slide here on it. We call it the principle of equivalent exchange. That means if Tiong Bahru is a nicer place to you than your own flat, you would gladly exchange your flat for a place in Tiong Bahru. Okay, and of course the person who is living in that unit right now must be also glad to come to your house. So it's an economic exchange, and both parties must be satisfied with the exchange before the exchange can take place. And using this principle, we can actually work out some estimate of what value the heritage holds. Okay, but let me see. Let me just skip this thing because we can't really collect data on that. And of course, we immediately apply this to a case study, and the case study is Tiong Bahru. I think the people here, maybe some of the people here knows Tiong Bahru better than me. So this is maps of Tiong Bahru, the recent map and the older map. And let me see. So of course, it is recognized as one of the oldest housing estates in Singapore, formerly a Chinese cemetery, but practically all housing estates are formerly cemeteries in one form or the other. But it was developed in the 1920s. It's an upper class enclave before World War II. And I read stories that the rich Singapore men stashed their mistresses in this place. But maybe that history we do not need to talk about again. And the old part of Tiong Bahru consists of 30 apartment blocks with about 900 units. It has very unique architectural style that is not seen anywhere else. And it has recently undergone a gentrification and is surprisingly popular with tourists. Okay, so this is I think a blogger, and also he wrote a piece for the what is this? CNN Travel. So this is the overseas international media, and it says that Tiong Bahru is Singapore's oldest and hippiest hood. And they interview, of course, locals who live there, and you can see these kind of pictures coming up. And if I then apply the principle of qualitative analysis to Tiong Bahru, and of course these are pictures I found on Google Images. So you can see that these are the photos that people like to take, and a lot of people like to take this particular building from this particular angle, because it is recognizable as Tiong Bahru. That's why they do it. And of course, there is also this one here, and then these are paintings, but you can see that they are more or less the same buildings. And this, of course, the market. There's no picture of the market. Don't know why. And then I can even find people writing songs about Tiong Bahru and poems about Tiong Bahru. And ultimately, there is a MediaCorp production TV series on Tiong Bahru. It's called 118, but I think this is one of the blocks in Tiong Bahru. Okay, so therefore, the theory of data seems to be correct. So we should be looking out for this kind of data. But what is the cultural heritage? And we believe that it is this particular activity pattern. You go from home, you go to the market, and then after finishing market, you go to the coffee shop and you meet your neighbors there, and you chat. and you can chat for 3-4 hours before you bring your rotting vegetable back home. Okay? But of course, this particular template of social activity is now currently under threat. And this template is found throughout older Singapore. We cannot be sure that it first came into existence in Tiong Bahru. But of course, in the old days, we only have wet markets. And the wet markets initially were dispersed, but they became concentrated in the typology that is found in Tiong Bahru. And it is very close to home and very close to the coffee shops. Therefore, people keep going there. It's a unique way of life. And first of all, right, if you go to Malaysia or even Hong Kong, you cannot find this pattern of human activity that looks like this. This is uniquely Singapore. I mean, unless I don't travel enough. Maybe, somewhere in Africa there's a template like this, but that'll be interesting. Then we should go and visit that place in Africa. And of course, this particular lifestyle is at risk because the younger generation now prefers to shop at supermarkets. They prefer to go to food courts instead of the old coffee shops. And of course, even more is that, because the pocket starts to go thicker and thicker, so they don't drink ordinary, Singapore coffee anymore. They drink Starbucks. So there is a shift that is happening right now. So old coffee shops seems to be getting displaced by modern cafes, wet markets displaced by supermarkets, and then there's a faster pace of life. You cannot really spend 3-4 hours to sit at the coffee shop to drink coffee with friends and neighbors anymore. Maybe you can do it with your colleagues, but not with, maybe even that also not possible. Okay, so this would then require maybe some rethinking in terms of urban planning and township design. And of course, I promised that I'm going to talk about gentrification. So earlier on, I think, let me recap a little bit. Earlier on, I mentioned that one of the key features of complex system is emergence. That means something that wasn't there, but because of the interactions between the microscopic actors, they appeared. So the cultural heritage is emergent. So if you talk to people who study culture, so they may not use that word emergent, but you can tell them that, I said that it is an emergent feature here. If they wish to understand more, I'm happy to talk to them. Another thing that is emergent is gentrification, because it doesn't always happen when you do the same thing over and over again. So it is also an emergent feature. It is a conditional feature. And it was first introduced, this word was first introduced, I think maybe it's not first introduced, but if you want to learn more about gentrification, then there is this book by Neil Smith and Peter Williams. So, say, Gentrification of the City. I think this is a fairly recent book because the pictures doesn't look black and white, so must be quite recent. And they define gentrifications as the process of rehabilitation of working class and derelict housing and the consequent transformation of an area into a middle class neighborhood. And of course, middle class seems to be the goal. Of course, everyone wants to be rich, but if those who are not rich, then at least they should be middle class. That's the goal of most governments in the world. And examples of gentrification would be Notting Hill, London. So this is an old photo of Notting Hill. This is what it looks like now. So if you visit Notting Hill in London, it now looks like this. And of course, there was a movie, and when I talked to someone from Britain, they said that the gentrification happens after the movie came out. But that's a local making a casual observation. A lot has been written about the gentrification of Notting Hill, and it is actually predates the movie. And in fact, most likely the gentrification of Notting Hill is the inspiration for the movie. Another place that is gentrified is Gateshead in Newcastle. Okay, this is the old port town. It looks ugly because a lot of the buildings are actually falling apart. And then they did a deliberate, so this is grounds up. So this is because rich people come into the region and bought the houses and start painting them and making the street looks nice. This is a deliberate gentrification attempt by the government, the local government of Gateshead. And this is, I think, an arts museum. And then they made all kinds of fancy buildings in Gateshead. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to attract much tourists. Okay? Now, and of course, everything you do, there will be people who will say this is good, and then there will be people who say that this is bad. The early supporters of gentrification including this Professor Lowry, Professor Smith, I couldn't find his photo, and then Professor Altshuler. I think this is probably the most influential one because he is in Harvard University. And what they believe is that you should gentrify a neighborhood whenever you have the opportunity to do so, because economics trickles down. So if you bring rich people into a neighborhood, they will spend money in the neighborhood, and then you will benefit the poorer residents in the area because you can, of course, open restaurants for them, and then they will come to your restaurants, but they can also go very far away. Okay? So, and there are also people who are opponents, so including Mark Abrahamson. He wrote a book that is very thick and not so easy to read, but I think Ruth Glass is the one who popularized this negative connotation of gentrification the most successfully. And then this is a younger scholar, Tom Slater, who will continue working along this line, trying to find examples that show that gentrifications are all bad. But unfortunately, there are also people who do measurements on the ground, like Stuart Cameron and John Coffey, who show that there are some instances where gentrification actually bring positive benefits to all residents, not just the new ones, but also the older ones there. Okay, now to understand the gentrification of Tiong Bahru, I lost track of time, so when should how much time do I have left? Is Jude here? How many? The whole is 45, but how much have I used up already? 45 minutes left, but cannot be, right? You still have to talk. Plus Q&A. Okay, then, but I'll skip a little bit of this because this is the theory that guides our thinking into data collection. You've seen earlier on that I have drawn networks. Ooh, what's happening now? Yeah, it's trying to hurry me. So my talk is trying to go ahead without me. Let me start over again at the right place. So this is the right place. Okay. So earlier you've seen me draw networks of the actors on top of a landscape system. So if we take away the landscape and just show the individuals, actually they participate in more than one network. This time round, we are going to be very particular about the kind of interactions. So here we are showing the family interactions. So this is one family. This is another family. This is another family. These people may be foreigners. They don't have family in Singapore. Therefore, they are all alone. At least from the family point of view. And then these pink, magenta links, they represent professional ties. Okay, so these are professional networks, and obviously the little kids have no professional connection to others, unless you want to include schools. The green color would then represent social ties. So these are people are just friends. They may have professional ties between them, or they may have none. So they are not part of the same family, and they have not sold anything to each other or given professional advice to each other. In the language of network modeling, this is called a multi-graph. Okay, so this is what the thing looks like. The description of multi-graph. So I mentioned that gentrification is an emergent phenomenon, which means that it is also pretty sudden. And of course, I think we have the impression that the gentrification of Tiong Bahru was pretty sudden. So how do we look for sudden events in complex systems? What we do is we try to understand what happens when something happens on a single network layer. For example, COVID-19. Of course, when did I give this talk? So I may have given this talk again after COVID-19 happens. So this person now kenas COVID-19. And then, of course, he didn't wear a mask, didn't wash his hands. So he spread to two other persons. And after another few days, the spread keeps going. And eventually, if you plot, right, the number of people infected by COVID-19, generally it will look like this S-shaped curve, a sigmoidal curve. Now, if I differentiate the S-shaped curve to find the rate of infection, it will look like this. So it is steepest here. So the rate of infection grows the fastest here, and you have a peak. And this is good because this gives the impression that this is a very sudden event. And we can also find out with some certainty the timing of the event. So we can say that one event is earlier than another event. And the reason for wanting to time events is to understand which was the main reason for gentrification of Tiong Bahru and which ones are just downstream the part of the cascade. And the next slide actually is a theory of the cascade. Let me just quickly move on to that slide and then continue on. Whoops, it's stuck again. Okay, so now we have multiple network layers. So something happens on this particular layer. It can produce a response on these two layers. And then this one can produce the secondary response over here and the tertiary response over here. And then sometimes what happens is that you can have a feedback as well. So feedbacks are possible. And if you don't time these events, they can look very, very confusing. Okay, so here are the popular accounts of the gentrification of Tiong Bahru. And so this is the same picture that I've shown. And in case you do not recognize this place, how many of you recognize this place? That means you've never been to Tiong Bahru after it gentrified. This is the cafe called 40 Hands. Yeah, so a lot of newspaper articles say that, the gentrification of Tiong Bahru was pioneered by 40 Hands, as well as another place called Tiong Bahru Bakery. I've been to the Tiong Bahru Bakery in Holland Village, but not the one in Tiong Bahru. Maybe I want to visit the grandfather there. Again. Oops. So the talk ended on its own. But so maybe that is some hints that I should get going. So let me just quickly get going back to here. Oh, somehow it. Sorry for the technology. I think what might have happened is that I pressed too much and a lot of things are cached up. Let me just quit this thing and launch it again. And it's still caching somehow. Okay, no sound already. I think it doesn't want me to continue with the talk. Let me just see what I can do. Okay, maybe Okay, so if I show it in this format, maybe I forget about the animations. I'll just advance the slides from here. But maybe I want to arrange all. Okay, so this is the popular account of the gentrification, basically brought about by 40 Hands and by Tiong Bahru Bakery, and now I have to stand beside this guy to advance the slides. Okay, so we first look into demographics data. These are the four, I don't know what they are called. They're not, I don't think Singapore calls them districts, but they are so Tiong Bahru is part of the Bukit Merah planning region, right? And then there are sub-regions inside the Bukit Merah planning region, and there are altogether 4 of them that has the name Tiong Bahru. So we pick them out and consider them Tiong Bahru, the area that we're interested in. And then we plot the population profile over time. And of course, this was one of the key features that was mentioned earlier, that the population in Tiong Bahru is aging and becoming fewer and fewer. And I think URA did something about that. So I think the first thing they did was to build new HDB flats there. So these are the new families moving in. So the way to interpret this kind of heat maps of the population profile is that this is the population moving in. And after they move in, right, you can see that there's this red things here. Do you know what this means? Babies. Yes, these are babies. So these are, and the age, if you look at the age group, these are the first time, these are the families that bought a HDB flat for the first time. They're about 30 to 35 years old, and these are their kids. And once in a while, you see sudden increase in the population like this. Elsewhere, we also have heat maps for Bukit Merah, and we didn't see something like this. But we do see people moving out for Bukit Merah, but for Tiong Bahru, people moved in. And then there is a second period where the population increased further, and these are mostly due to private condominiums. So you can see this kind of the results from here. And of course, after that, we started to look at the prices. So I marked out the timing of the first wave of people moving in against the price, and you can see that condominium price rose after the second wave. Understandable, because during the first wave, the new buildings are HDB flats. Okay, and then if you look at HDB, the house price rose, the HDB resale price rose after the first wave, understandably, because more HDB flats now. And then after the second wave, they stop rising because now people can go and buy the condos. Okay, but more importantly is the rental. You can see that the rental price change is actually very sharp. So if I differentiate this data down here, I'll get the sharp peak that I've shown you earlier. And okay, I will skip this. I'll just say that, we have checked this income data from the census. So the census that we've looked at, I think is 2000, and I didn't write them down there. Oh yeah, it's down here. So the census that were looked at is 2000, 2010, and 2015. I think in 2015, Singapore decided that we will do a census every 5 years instead of every 10 years. I mean, I would love it for it to be every year, but I think there's too much work. So you can see that indeed the new people moving in are richer people. So they are, and we can also say something else, but I will not say that. And then this is the commercial landscape. And the most important industry sectors in Tiong Bahru, number one is wholesale trade, based on the number of firms there. Second one is retail trade. Retail trade will be, the kind of shops that sell things to the local people. And then the third one is surprising, is head offices. And only the fourth one is F&B. This data that I bought from, the business registry. I forgot the actual name already, but it was not that difficult to get the data, but difficult to get the money to get the data. Okay, then we look at wholesale trade. There seems to be a general decline over the years, but no sharp changes. Forget about the graph on the other side. For retail trade, then you see something like this happening. So this is the first wave, then the second wave. After the second wave, there was a sudden boom in the number of registration. I think this may have to do with the sudden increase in availability of retail space. So a lot of people come in. And what you realize is that the blue color is registration. The red color is deregistration. And you can see that there are 87 registrations here. And a few years afterwards, you have 66 of them deregistering. I have checked actually who these people are and who these people are. They are related. So most of the people who deregistered are from these people who just come in and recklessly register themselves to sell things in Tiong Bahru when they haven't done a proper market survey. Okay, so retail trade, you see a sharp change. Head office, you also see a sharp change. F&B, very inconclusive. So I wouldn't say that there is any sharp changes in the F&B sector. So is the popular account of the gentrification correct? We do not know. So obviously we need to say something more about the restaurants that actually found their ways into Tiong Bahru, but we have not done something that detailed. So now we have finished. My slides wants me to finish fast, so I will just finish here. So I started the talk explaining what a complex system is and how we can take a complex system perspective on urban social dynamics. Then I talk about the theory that I've developed together with Andrea to first understand intangible and tangible cultural heritage, both the processes that are important as well as the data that we should be collecting. And then I started out on a case study of Tiong Bahru, look at the qualitative assessments for the cultural heritage. And it turns out that the cultural heritage of Tiong Bahru is important for the gentrification. So why is Tiong Bahru attracting all the yuppies? Because they like the old feeling of Tiong Bahru. So this is kind of ironic, right? When you can afford newer places, you go to an old place. Okay, and the gentrification, we have conclusive evidence, I think, that this is what broader and deeper means, that this is the gentrification itself is a phenomenon that is broader and deeper than what the popular account makes it out to be. And the type of gentrification is called new build gentrification. So that means you don't kick out old residents, you just build in land parcels that you can find, new people move in, and that creates the change in the landscape. Most noticeably in the commercial landscape, and we are now having ongoing work. So I found that from I found the evidences from data, but the data don't talk, right? So data cannot tell me whether my conclusions are correct or not. So right now we are planning to actually interview residents of Tiong Bahru to ask them whether they notice the changes, whether they agree with our conclusions, and we are planning to recruit 6 different groups of people, old residents who are still there, old residents that moved away, so we want to understand why they moved away. Then we want to also interview new residents, new local residents, to see why they want to move there, and also new foreign residents, because it's attractive to, because Tiong Bahru is attractive to foreigners, so as maybe not just as a place to hang out, but also as a place to live. And then finally, we're going to interview the business owners, both the old ones who may be retiring soon, as well as new ones, maybe the boss of 40 Hands, for example. Okay, so I thank you for your attention. Do I take questions now or later? So questions? Oh, okay. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Prof, for I think it's quite clear from that from slide 20 plus that you give us different facets in terms of demographic, in terms of the condo purchasing and so on. But I'm just wondering, going back slightly back to the network model.
Yeah.
I'm actually a bit more interested in actually elaborate a little bit more. For instance, within the layer, I'm quite interested in how the team models the interaction. Do you use heterogeneous agent modeling, or so on, to model the family ties, car ties? That's the first question.
Do you want me to answer now or?
After you.
Okay, so I answer that now. So a network model is a baby agent-based model. That means that the nodes are like agents, but they don't really have agency. They cannot make decisions. Okay, so the models I've shown you, they are even static. They're not even dynamic. So obviously, you know, whether they can make decisions, whether they are dynamic, these are important extensions of the model. Okay, then you mentioned heterogeneous. So network models are automatically heterogeneous. Yeah. So once I talk about network models, you don't have to worry that I'm treating every agent as being identical to each other, because they are not.
So your network, I suppose it's a bit similar to those kind of shipping, transport, that kind of network.
Yes. Yeah, like, you know, if you measure all the shipping and transshipment, then Singapore is a hub. So that means Singapore is not like other ports, because we handle more transshipment than other places. Yeah. So is that automatically heterogeneous? Yes. You have another question.
Okay, so I'm looking at this gentrification that inclusive evidence. I understand you actually connect the registered address data from ICA, and actually it does show that, I think it will show very clearly, maybe over past 10 years, there will be a trend that, there will be elderlies, and then there will be.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you think that, how about this project, taking into consideration or merge with the use of admin data, or perhaps it's more efficient?
Most of the free data we get from data.gov. Yeah, so the demographics is from data.gov. The income data is from the 3 census I mentioned. So unfortunately, I think unless we can get taxation data, we will never be able to figure out the income changes as a function by year basis. Yeah. So, and I understand that taxation data is sensitive, so it will not reach my hands. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you mentioned ICA data, so that means individual people. So I also wonder whether I can get those data, because there is another data that is important to my theory, and I want to get, but I cannot get, and that is I show you the change in the commercial landscape, right? So accompanying, if there is gentrification, then accompanying the gentrification, there is also change in the social activity landscape. So I wrote to PA, asked them, can you give me a list of all the events that you have organized? They say no. Yeah, I wrote to the HQ. They say, ask the Tiong Bahru branch. And then I wrote to the Tiong Bahru branch and say, HQ never say can, I don't give.
You're concerned with the company's lifespan and how old is the company, whether that new company registered or not, right? I think there's a database and there's a system actually capture all this.
Yeah. So we bought data from this database. It depends on how much detail I want. So if I just want the unique, I think if I just want the UEN, then I think it's just cheaper. But I want the date that they are first registered and the date that they deregister, because that is important for us. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering, based on the heritage system analysis you have performed, can you identify success factors that are important for preserving heritage, for increasing the economic situation?
Understand. So we have done something like a causal analysis for gentrification, but we have not done a causal analysis for the successful preservation of heritage in Tiong Bahru. Unfortunately, I don't know whether we can even get those data anymore, because you understand that I identified the 3 processes: replication, transmission, and transformation. So for those, we actually need rather detailed record. Yeah. If not, then what happens is that we can infer them from mentions, let's say in the traditional media. But again, Singapore, Tiong Bahru is like a very tiny place in Singapore, so there are not that many newspapers that mention it. And so I'm not sure that we can find enough data to establish what is the reason for the emergence of certain cultural practices, and how those are maintained over time, because actually we are at an age where a lot of cultural heritage are on the verge of disappearing. The most obvious ones are languages. I have a friend who is an Indonesian professor. He said that Indonesia has thousands of indigenous languages, but they most likely will disappear within 100 years. Yeah, and he, of course, it is in the interest of the Indonesian government to try to preserve all of it. Then maybe if not, then most of it. If not, then some of it. But they don't even know how. Yeah.
But then it's also very difficult to give advice also for newly built developments, how you can enhance the cultural systems.
That's right. So we before we did Tiong Bahru, we did another case study. That is H Street in Washington, D.C. So there, the data is a lot more complete compared to Singapore, because everything that is collected using government money must go on this data.gov.washington, D.C. So, and we also have newspaper records from very, very, very far back. And there are things that we understand, but again, in order to test some of our hypotheses requires more data that we were not able to get our hands on. Yeah.
What's the data you miss the most in Singapore?
Well, I mean, it's a PA data. PA data will be very, very useful. Also, we don't have it in Washington, D.C. So in order to get data like this, we will probably have to go to the field and do cultural mapping on our own. So we propose to do something like that for a much smaller plot of land that the Washington, D.C. Municipal Council wants to rejuvenate. But then, Donald Trump became president and no more money.
Yeah. And P&A data is what, sorry?
Sorry?
You mentioned P&A data?
Not P&A, People's Association. So these are all the community centers because they regularly conduct activities, organize activities for the residents. So if there is a shift, you will know. So that means before that they have maybe say floral arrangement classes. Then after that it's all cooking classes, or maybe martial arts classes. Then we know that there is a sudden shift in the population. So their preferences have changed. Yeah. And then of course we then need to find explanation why certain kind of social activities become less favorable compared to others, and connect to everything. Yeah. Yeah, but that is a very tedious process, and of course you can. Did I mention that I was a physicist? So I don't really know how to do all this stuff, except just walk around, trial and error, and with the advice of Andrea. Yeah. But he couldn't advise me much on gentrification because even that is outside of his area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Prof. Thank you for the nice presentation, and I think it's a really nice qualitative interpretation of a complex system, different from what we usually see in the literature. So I have two questions.
Yeah.
So one is, what parts of this study are actually manual and what parts are automatable? Because for example, if we want to implement this study at another neighborhood in Tiong Bahru, the question is how scalable do you think this approach is? That's the first question.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question, scalability. Right now, I don't even know how to do the whole thing from the beginning to the end. So obviously it's not scalable. So everything is manual. Everything is manual. But if I have done this maybe 2 or 3 times, then I would know what area is scalable. So for example, I now know with quite a level of confidence that commercial landscape analysis can be automated. Okay, and if let's say PA is willing to give me data, that kind of analysis can also be automated. Demographics, definitely very easy to automate. Then the more difficult thing would be to validate against the residents and the business owners in the area. That one we cannot automate, unfortunately, because you have to ask people. And I don't think they will automatically volunteer answers. And if you want to do a survey, large-scale survey, just by calling them, you need to know what questions to ask. So right now, we are not even very good at finding the right questions. We are just stumbling along. So we do this one first, see whether this thing works out reasonably well, then maybe we can improve it for the next iteration. Yeah. So actually, this is something that I have been discussing with Li Ming, but she's not here. Maybe I can say this thing. So we have discussed, if this becomes successful, we have 2 other areas that we intend to apply the same methodology to. Yeah. But of course, they are different. So Tiong Bahru has this advantage of being given a cultural heritage status. The other 2 areas don't have this. Yeah. Yeah, your second question.
I have a second question. So I think earlier in the slide when you were introducing the theory, there was mentions of buildings as well.
Yep.
So how will you merge these 2 together, the social component and the physical component of networks?
Social component and the physical. Everything I show is social. So it is through proximity to the social interactions that the buildings take on additional value, right? So the enhancement can be detected if we try to look for the data that I mentioned earlier. That means look for photographs, look for paintings, look for mentions, these kind of things. But you can also directly interview the people. Yeah, so that will be a faster way to get. But of course, I think maybe you are also more interested in the quantitative aspect, right? Yeah, because in US, even they face the same problem. They have there are some buildings that the people locally consider valuable, but a developer bought it for cheap. That means the valuation is wrong, right? So the valuation by the city council, which is selling that plot of land, they don't know how to they don't know how to add the social component of value on top of the value of the land, the value of the building, which is very old, so therefore it is actually depreciating over time, but they don't know how to add those things. Yeah, we don't know now also, so we probably need to do more work before we can safely advise people, how much should you add if you see this kind of social interactions, how much should you add, how much more should you add if you also find something else. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you want.
Hi,
Yeah.
Prof. So I was just wondering, because you have all of these qualitative kind of assessments that you did in Tiong Bahru, but
Yeah.
I'm still just trying to draw the link of how these kind of assessments can actually add to like understanding how to quantify cultural value in a particular area. So would it be in some form of, at least what I'm thinking now is like some kind of like cultural value index, so that you can be able to score different kind of neighborhoods or areas
Understand.
based on these kind of assessments. Is
Yes,
there
yes.
something like, have you done some work there?
No, so this is precisely the work that I said I want to do but haven't done. Yeah. So this is not so easy because we proposed to the Washington DC people that we are willing to do cultural mapping. So the best is that they have volunteers to do it for us. Otherwise, we might fly in there just to do it. But it is a very laborious process, cannot be automated easily, and has to do with the daily lives of people. Yeah. So the daily lives of people may seem very mundane if you just look at one single individual. But if you see where the daily lives of people intersect, then that's where the significance lies. But without detailed mapping, I don't think those kind of information is that easy to get. Yeah. So, but I mean, you represent the government. Maybe you have the resources to actually do this kind of mapping. Yeah, but of course the data can be very confusing after you initially collect it. So on our end, we hope that we understand enough about the processes to be able to dive into the data set and analyze it iteratively until we get most of the information out from the data. Oh.
One more question actually.
Uh-huh.
So actually, if you do this kind of study on a smaller scale, like let's say for specific buildings, like let's say for example, strata entitled buildings such as
Understand.
the most well-known one is the Golden Mile complex.
Yeah.
There are other strata, there are lesser known strata entitlements also, which might not be very like cultural significant, like on an island-wide scale, but certain very specific communities would be very culturally significant. So some
Understand.
places like City Plaza, where you have your Indonesian enclave who hang out there every weekend.
Yeah.
So how could you actually use your current assessments to quantify the cultural heritage for such buildings?
Well, I mean, one thing you could do would be to interview the Indonesian people who visit this place, how frequently they visit, what they do there, and then because based on activity, we can sometimes assign dollar value. Sometimes, not all the time. If I share a joke and then people laugh, I don't think that you can assign a dollar value. But a lot of the other things that they do you may be able to assign dollar values. Then after that, right? If you want to look at the sum total value of these kind of interactions on top of the actual value of Golden Mile complex, you can start with simple estimates. Then obviously over time we hope to get better at the valuation. And I think the purpose of the valuation is not to make Golden Mile complex look like a very atas place, but to value it correctly so that you don't have the same problem with Washington, D.C., where a developer bought over a piece of land for cheaps. They want to redevelop it, but the locals block it because they want to see that building there. It has significance to them. So there must, and if you cannot put the value on the table, there's no negotiation possible.
Yeah, because I guess one of the biggest problems with gentrification is that you kind of like adjust the building facade, or like the case for the Newcastle case study you mentioned just now, it just totally destroy the entire all of the buildings there, and then just build up new buildings where no one really likes, and just.
Well, I mean, the locals like it. The locals like it, but it is not as successful as they had hoped. You know, they hope to attract tourists, but the tourists are not really coming because I think this is important. The new buildings have no stories.
Yeah, exactly. Like the
Yeah.
entire neighborhood just loses its history and its
Yes.
significance
Yeah.
once you just.
Yeah. So I think it is important that if you want to manage cultural heritage, that you do not wipe away the history and stories. You build on top of it. And I say that very casually, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's what you're trying to go for.
I understand. But it's important to have the stories, because if there's no story, why would I want to go there, right? Yeah. I mean, so stories can be very simple things, like, you know, night markets. There are lots of night markets in Taiwan. But then when I go to a place, I want the best one. So-called this best night market is also a story in some sense. It is transmitted by word of mouth, and you know, over time, you know, there is this kind of consensus that builds up that tells me that this is the best. I go there. I may be disappointed, but I will go there. And there's another place that may be better in terms of the food quality, but because there's no story, I didn't go. Yeah. I think. Do you want to ask a question, or you? Oh.
Hi, Prof.
Yeah.
Thanks for your great sharing. I'm quite inspired by the framework you start from theory then to concrete research.
Yeah.
My question is about the heritage part. You mentioned about the intangible heritage and the tangible heritage, and right.
Tangible and intangible, is it?
Yeah.
Ah.
And beyond these two, you
Yeah.
also mentioned a lesson about the
Symbiotic.
symbiotic.
Yeah, that means they reinforce each other. So the building reinforces the social interactions. The social interactions reinforce the value of the building. They become part of a greater whole that is different from the original sum of parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I first time heard this classification between this heritage.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So the heritage part, actually, we have published. If you want, I can share the papers. Except that the one that is most detailed, we publish in Chinese. But maybe you can you can read it. I don't know about the rest, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe you let Jude know if you want to read the papers, and we can share that with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
Yeah.
And may I know who are the most collaborators you work on this, the later case study?
You mean the gentrification?
Yeah.
Well, pretty much I work on it alone. I had a postdoc who was very good at collecting the data and visualizing the data. Then we sit together, we analyze, and we have written up the part that is on the analysis of data. But now we are getting ready to collect validation from the people who live in Tiong Bahru. So after we've done that, then we have a whole, I think, a much better package that we can write up for publication. So that part is not yet published.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Hi, thanks very much. Just wanted to understand two questions. So the first one is, in terms of preserving a cultural heritage, have you thought about the different angles as to what is the objective? Because the objective of, say, the government and the URA, right, in future development,
Understand,
and, plot ratio and what have you.
Yeah.
The objective and the priorities are different from, say, the people, right?
Right.
Or as you mentioned, the
Yeah.
tourists, right? If
Yes.
to attract tourists, for
Yeah,
economic.
yeah.
So how would a matrix could even be put together in terms of balancing the objectives?
I understand. So I think that's a very important question. So far, the key question has been on details of work that has been done, but not to this. So, like, why do people in Tiong Bahru care about the heritage of Tiong Bahru, right? Yeah, I think we care about culture and heritage because, first of all, we enjoy doing them. So you ask me why I like to play badminton, I just like, I cannot explain that to you. But and because when I play with this bunch of people, we form very strong bonds. So from the government's point of view, those strong bonds are very useful. Because, let's say, got COVID, right? Then those bonds can be, those bonds and the social capital behind the bonds can be used to maybe just spread the correct way to deal with the crisis, or for the purpose of rebuilding. So we engage in all these things because we like it, and we object, of course. If you want to tear down my badminton hall, then of course I'm going to cry father, cry mother. Yeah, right.
Right. Then the next layer in a way of the question, right, is
Mm-hmm.
with regards to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you in one of the earlier slides, you did mention, right, the paintings, depending on whether it's a famous person or it's a novice,
Yeah.
it's differently, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about how can we weigh sort of the different types of people, right? Because who is important? Is the young important? Is the old important? Is
Yeah.
the lower SES versus the higher SES families important? The people the families who choose to say preserve the dialect within the family would be very different from a more westernized family. For example,
Right. Yeah.
And these are all important to each individual self, but
Yes.
collectively, how do you
Yeah.
pull together actually?
I understand. So because I mentioned the word value, now you bring to me human values. I do not know the answer to questions like that because it's very difficult because, like you mentioned, the two different kinds of families, they go different trajectories because they have different values. Yeah, so those who want to preserve dialect, those who don't really care about preserving dialect, they have their own priorities in life. And in principle, there's no reason why they cannot coexist peacefully, right? So if possible, we want to find ways for them to coexist. And same thing, I think, with cultural heritage in Tiong Bahru. Those people who care a lot about, old buildings, maybe we can, keep them in a way that will also make the people who don't care too much about them happy. Yeah. I mean, for people who don't care about their existence, probably means that they don't care about its presence also, right? So if you find the correct use for it, then maybe those people who didn't care now have reason to care. Yeah. But I mean, I cannot comment on values because that's far beyond my training already. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned about the causality analysis for gentrification.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? Is it more of the quantity or the quality? What's causality usually?
You understand. Yeah. So causality is always quantitative. Okay? Because let's say, you go to court and you say that this person killed this other person because he fired a gun. But if it can be established that the person died before the gun was fired, then it is not causal anymore. So in the court of law, this person has no responsibility.
We did try some causality establishment in terms of quantity, right?
Yeah.
Very specific and
So here what happens is that we rely on one particular aspect of complex system dynamics to establish timings. Because obviously the primary cause should be the earliest. Then after that followed by intermediate causes. And then of course then you have the final outcome. Now, this is not to say that the earliest thing is definitely the cause, because it may be a standalone phenomenon. It's a flash in the pan. Boop, it happens. Then after that, it doesn't happen to any. So usually what happens is that in order to establish causality, the time ordering of events is important, but we also have to establish that there is micro causality between the events. That means the first event we must be able to say that it triggered the second one. And then the second one, we must be able to say that it triggers the third one and the fourth one and so on. Yeah, and that would be, going too far downstream already. I would have no data to actually check that kind of thing. Basically, you would need me to go and interview people to ask them, why they made certain home choices. Yeah. And then, after they make the home choices, I will have to ask them, do you like 40 Hands or Tiong Bahru Bakery? Things like that, yeah. So basically, I need to know too much about a person that probably, I shouldn't because of, with issues of privacy. Yeah. I don't want to take up all of Lok Yu's time. So is Lok Yu going to talk? Yeah.